Warning, this video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel and welcome to the week. Welcome to Monday. Today I want to talk a little bit about top signals because I think the later we get through this bull phase of the 4-year cycle, the more of these top signals I can see. And that absolutely makes sense. It's something we've been calling for, right? People moving the goalpost, no more 4-year cycles, all that kind of stuff, right? Narratives. We're going to dig into that. But it's actually happening so fast that it kind of makes me think we are going to top for the ultimate 4-year cycle, potentially in this current weekly cycle. I was hoping what we would get is a push up to the top of this weekly cycle, another weekly cycle low, and then maybe one final push thereafter. And that is still possible. But the speed with which I'm seeing these kind of Fourier-driven retail type narratives proliferate makes me think we're actually a lot closer to a major top here than most people are ready for. So I just want to kind of point at these things. You don't have to take my side of the argument here. You don't have to believe what I'm saying. I'm just presenting what I see and speaking from experience. But for me, at least, I kind of see a lot of this stuff that I'm going to show you today, and I start to think, oh no, this is not conducive to many more months of upside here. I also want to point at some Ethereum stuff to show you because, again, that kind of suggests the top is pretty close for this cycle. Unless, of course, a different setup can present, then maybe that can buy us some more time, so I'll show you that. And, of course, we'll head into some charts, check in on the live trades and positions, and do some TA, as always, ready for the week ahead. So if you haven't done already, hit that like and subscribe button, and let's dig into today's episode. First of all, Sonny and I are going to do another collab, hopefully on Thursday this week. So look out for that. I think it's going to blow the last podcast we did out of the water, to be honest. And I know the last one we did was one of the best received collabs I've done on the channel ever. So make sure you tune in on Thursday. Make sure you subscribe to the notifications on so that you can get notified when this thing goes live. If you're anything like me, and I'm sure you probably are, at least in this respect, you woke up this morning, you took a look at the Bitcoin price on your phone and were pleasantly surprised to see this thing pushing up to about 122k. So can't complain with that. Looks to me like we confirmed cycle lows are in a little bit early. That's fine, the indicators picked it. We have the setup that we were going over all last week. So if you needed to long that, hopefully the setup was given and you managed to capitalize on that. But as I said at the start, I'm seeing a lot of these things that just kind of make me feel uncomfortable, right? And this is one of them. Bitcoin has hit the front page of the Financial Times. If I grab my magnifying glass, you can see here, hopefully, Friday, 8th of August, okay? Why are listed companies piling into Bitcoin? So I see things like this, and I just can't help but think that the mainstream media is starting to ring the bell to drive in as much retail as possible so that the institutions can distribute into them. We were talking about this last week with the kind of 401ks being allowed to buy Bitcoin and that kind of thing a little bit later in the cycle. We're seeing it in the UK where they're about to approve ETNs to retail and pension clients. And I believe that date for that is October the 8th or something like that. Again, to me, it just kind of speaks to allowing the masses to buy Bitcoin right at the top of this 4-year cycle. And we've got yet another one of these headlines or another one of these tweets where it's like, this is why Bitcoin 4-year cycle is over. And I said, look, they're all just parrots, aren't they? There's not a single unique thought on this entire platform. Nothing against OP personally, right? I don't know that guy. He's just one of many. But the thing that concerns me, and the thing I believe everyone else should be concerned with, is that these treasuries are hidden leverage in the system, and the markets function like heat-seeking missiles for this de facto leverage. A 50% bear market rapidly exposes the weak links and turns into a 70% bear market, which in turn blows out other over-leveraged players and quickly turns into a liquidation cascade. And it's the same every time, not just in Bitcoin, not just pertaining to treasuries, but in all bear markets, in all asset classes. And here's how you know that something like this is certain, okay? Because human greed will continue to push the limits until something physically breaks. Humans will not be satisfied and will keep cranking up the leverage until something breaks. They will never lever up and say, yeah, you know what, that's enough. Let's not go too far now. We don't want anything to break, right? Humans don't behave in such a manner. Instead, they're going to keep going, thinking nothing can go wrong because nothing has gone wrong yet. And I just think most people don't realize this risk because they've only been trading for 5 years, maybe less, right? When you've been doing this a lot longer, when you've been doing this as long as I have, or even longer still, you've seen this kind of thing countless times in countless different formats. This time is really no different. By the way, I made a whole video here, Hidden Leverage, Bitcoin leverage in the system is concerning, where I was talking about how this would work. I also showed the difference, I believe, in this video between how most people believe the markets trend up, a black swan occurs, and that's what tops the market. When in reality, it is recessions and bear markets that expose and create black swans, not the other way around. So markets trend up, they top, okay, and then on the way down, this decline exposes the foul players. It exposes the chicanery, it exposes those over-leveraged players, and it's the bear markets and recessions that create black swans that lead to the final capitulative moves into the bottom. So all of that's in this video. I'll put a little tab up in the top right of the screen, hopefully right now, as I'm saying this. Vitalik knows about this as well, and I have never really been a man to sing this guy's praises, to be completely honest with you, but for the first time ever I heard him say something that I wholeheartedly agree with. So I'm going to play this clip now from Vitalik.
And yeah, like if you woke me up 3 years from now and told me that Treasuries led to the downfall of ETH, then of course my guess for why would basically be that somehow they turned into an over leverage game, and then at some point like they a 30% drop turned into forced liquidations that turned into a 50% drop, and then a 70 and 90% drop, and then that got compounded with a loss of credibility.
So there you have it, okay? Vitalik has been here long enough to know that this is how things potentially work. Vitalik has been around long enough to know that this is a real risk to the system. Now, it doesn't mean that this will be the death of Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything like that. It just means, I think the people that are parroting this idea that there is no more bear markets, or we won't have a 60, 70, 80% plus bear market in Bitcoin anymore because institutions are here, or there won't be any more 4-year cycles, whatever it is, those people are setting themselves up to be wrecked. This is exactly the type of complacency that occurs at the top, okay? We all hear this, okay? People get greedy and complacent at the top. What does complacent actually mean though? Okay, showing smug or uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one's achievements. This is what happens when the markets perpetually go up for about 3 years like they have been. People start to think nothing can go wrong. People start to over leverage. And even though a lot of people will be sat here saying things like, yeah, but what about Michael Saylor? Like, he hasn't got leverage, got 0% bonds and credit notes. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's true in this one case. But can you put your hand on your heart and honestly say, out of all of these companies that have been creating Bitcoin or Ethereum treasuries, you have 100% trust in all of them. None of them have gone a bit degenerate in their way of doing so, right? Do you really think that there's absolutely nothing wrong? Because that's what we're saying here, isn't it? There's only one of two things can be true. Either all of those companies and treasuries have bought that Bitcoin or Ethereum and they've done so responsibly and they really mean it when they say they're going to diamond hand it and never sell. If that's true, there is no problem here whatsoever. But the other option is some of them are potentially over-leveraged. Some of them are being degenerate. Some of them actually don't hold any loyalty to diamond handing Bitcoin and will be more than happy to dump a bunch of it to try to save some profits on their company balance sheet. If the latter is true, and I believe it is, then it could act as a short-term deleveraging in the crypto space that would likely fuel a bear market much deeper than most people are currently positioned for. And again, when you've got the majority of participants positioned for either no more bear markets, no more 4-year cycles, or worse still, a 30% bear market, this is how you catch everyone off guard. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about this is how you get recessions and bear markets causing black swans, while everyone else thinks black swans have to show up and that's the top signal and they can just duck out as soon as a black swan arrives. But that's actually not how it works. So still bullish, right? Bitcoin's clearly still going up, clearly still going to be profiting from longs for a while longer. In the level 3 member section, we're still going to try and extract even more beta out of this asset class using the crypto stocks. Nothing has really changed to the bull case. It's not me trying to be a doomsayer. But when we look at this 4-year cycle here, okay, we have completed the vast majority of this bull phase of the 4-year cycle. And again, notice how the sentiment has shifted. Already, people went from, oh, it's really simple. Buy at the 4-year cycle low, sell in around October of this year, and then 12-month bear market decline. Keep in mind, if we're being honest, I was one of the people that didn't really subscribe to this idea. I was calling for a left translation because this is cycle 4. Remember, back here, everyone was saying, Camel, no way you get left translation, nothing's ever different. Okay, and so far they were right, but note the subtle difference. As we've invalidated left translation, as we've gotten all the way to here, those same people that down here were screaming, nothing's ever different, of course it's going to top when it always tops, of course there's going to be a 12-month bear market. Those people have now moved the goalposts right here to no more bear market, no more 4-year cycle. Do you see what I mean? Right? It's easy to say it, it's not easy to do it. Okay, you have to stick to your plan, and it takes a great deal of discipline to do that. Right now, it seems like the masses have started to abandon ship on their idea right at the most critical time possible. And I'm getting even more concerned because if you're a no more 4-year cycle guy, then CNBC agrees with you. This is from CNBC itself, okay? Bitcoin is typically traded in a 4-year price cycle centered around the event called the halving. I mean, that's not true, but whatever. But more recently, that cycle, which has often had a predictable pattern, has shown signs of breaking or even disappearing altogether. Has it? Is that even true right now? Does this look broken to you just yet? I don't think so, okay? So if it continues to trend up with no sign of a 4-year cycle low, then I think we can say, yeah, the thing's broken. But how can we look at this at the moment, which at the moment is completely textbook, and say it's showing signs of breaking, right? Do you see what I mean? And again, if you're one of these people that says, no, there's never going to be a 4-year cycle, well, you're on the mainstream media's side, okay? That's not a side of the trade I am comfortable being on. Meanwhile, speaking of CNBC and the mainstream media, what else do you see here? Okay, we're talking about ETH flipping Bitcoin. Again, if you haven't been here very long, you might even think this is possible. But the reality is, every single year, people say this flip's going to happen, and it never ever does. The real flippening is probably much more likely XRP taking ETH's spot, although that is not a call or a prediction. And again, if you've been here for a long time, because there's a lot of people that will hear me say that and get visibly angry. I can already see the steam coming out of some people's ears as I say this, right? But the reality is, it's done it several times before. You just probably haven't been here long enough to know that it has. And it could easily do it again. It's got far more chance of doing that than ETH does of flipping Bitcoin. And I even think Sol has more of a chance of flipping ETH than ETH has of flipping Bitcoin. But who knows, right? The point is, note where we are again in that major 4-year cycle, and this kind of BS that comes around every single cycle top is coming round again. Speaking of BS, ETH to 80k, right? I hope you're a little bit concerned, right? If you weren't this morning, I hope you are now, because this stuff to me just makes me think, oh man, like we're even closer to a top than I was hoping for. And again, with the whole retail here, silly ideas, silly narratives, inaccurate information and all that kind of thing, okay, we continue to see more and more of this total nonsense. We get headlines like this: Trump's portfolio is 87% in ETH, right? Sounds super bullish, doesn't it? Except when you take a look at this, it's a total of 200 mil portfolio, okay? And he's got 192 mil of that in Ethereum. So at face value, then this seems like, wow, I should just dump everything and go all in ETH like Trump has. But again, keep in mind, DJT, okay, his own stock company, just bought $2 billion worth of Bitcoin for their corporate treasury. So this entire portfolio down here is around 10% of his crypto holding, with around 90% of his holdings in Bitcoin. This stuff is his speculative degen bags, right? This is his gambling 10% part of his portfolio, while he's got 90% of it in Bitcoin. Again, this is what I mean. There's just, as more and more people come into this space, this kind of thing proliferates. And again, it kind of speaks, at least to me, to being close to those tops. So is there a chance of alt season? Well, I like this analysis right here, okay? Right now, it's not alt season, it's ETH season. If you want real confirmation, the altcoin dominance chart has never lied. Every hope of an alt season this cycle has been shut down by a Gaussian channel midline rejection. Okay, we can see one here, 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 and here. Right now, we're right into the same midline again. So if we're going to reject, then again, this is yet another fake out. There is yet another rejection, and there's again not going to be another broad-based alt season. Of course, if this thing can start to break out and move higher, then we may well have an actual alt season for a few weeks. And note again, okay, regardless of what I think of altcoins or alt season or any of that stuff, objectively speaking, when we get a pop like this and a true alt season and alts will ramp up, usually that means Bitcoin has topped. Usually Bitcoin fully tops, okay, we get a couple of months, total of 6 to 8 weeks of alt season, and then the whole thing comes tumbling down. So if this thing's going to break out here, that means Bitcoin is either topped or is in the process of topping. And again, speaks to not having much time left here before the major tops come in for the market, doesn't it? So if anything, regardless of what you think of altcoins, it would probably be nice here to see the rejection, right? To buy us more time whilst Bitcoin moves up, and then hopefully we could push through here as we get the rotation. That would give us more time for Bitcoin to run. But keep an eye on this, because if this thing does actually blast off, like I said, then it probably means either the top's in for Bitcoin or Bitcoin is in the topping process. And this is a very similar concept applied with ETH Bitcoin as well. So most ETH holders have a lot of Bitcoin, ICOs, insiders, and they're rotating that Bitcoin into ETH to pump it on new narratives, like Ethereum Treasuries. Once they've got an ETH high enough, they'll dump their ETH, creating new generational bag holders, and then rotate the gains back into Bitcoin. Nobody wants ETH in the long run. Plan accordingly. It's going to be challenging for ETH to break the all-time highs, because the closer you reach to that psychological level, the stronger the drive to sell is. The bag holder's dilemma. Bitcoiners shouldn't be worried about ETH Bitcoin breaking the downward trend line. Ethereum has always been a vehicle for those people to get more Bitcoin. It was true for the ICO, and it's true now. So what have we got right now? The ETH Bitcoin pair right into resistance. Again, can it break out? Perhaps. Okay, but can it break out and move to new highs? That's to be determined. And also keep in mind, as I was saying about Altseason in general, regardless of your position on altcoins, you should probably be cheering on a bit more chop and rejection before this thing gets going, because that will buy us enough time for Bitcoin to pump once more, for dominance to climb back up, and it will give us more time to squeeze more total gains out of this market. But if this thing is going to blast off from here for the next couple of weeks, it may well speak to, like I said earlier, the top already being in for Bitcoin, or for Bitcoin to be in a topping process, and then all of this entire bull run could be over in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. And since I mentioned Bitcoin dominance, let's take a quick look at that. Okay, right back into support. Okay, no changes. Or if you're a tape slave, you're probably jumping up and down and popping champagne here, but we'll see, right? Daily close plus a couple of candles, and then even I have to accept that this is a true breakdown. Otherwise, this is a bounce off of support, and are you going to short support? I wouldn't personally. So just before we get into some charts, the weatherman here has shown us that he believes the phase line is set for the S&P 500, and if a weekly close is below this trend line, it's likely to lead to a multi-year, if not multi-decade bear market. Here's the hyperwave setup, okay? We are possibly in phase 4, so could continue to go absolutely vertical here for a while longer, but once this trend line breaks down, that is probably the top for the market, which of course again fits with the work on this channel, fits with the weekend's deep dive as we slowly head into recession, and fits with the idea that the 4-year cycle for the stocks, for gold, and for Bitcoin are all due to top in the next couple of months. So heading into the charts and the TA and the live positions, you know, we've been positioned for this for a while. We're still positioned for this, and we've got a high confluence Camel Finance low picked back here. We've got the confirmation via the trendline break, as I was talking about over the last week. So if you needed to add exposure, that was your opportunity to do it. I did give you plenty of warning for this. So hopefully if you wanted to add, you managed to get a position on there. The S&P continues to push higher, right? We've still got the cycle lows behind us. We're still pretty early in this current cycle, and we haven't violated any trend lines. So long and strong heading into this week across the board for the stocks. Notice how the VIX keeps making lower highs and rolling over, heading down to our generational entry. I really hate that term, but it kind of is on this occasion. Okay, this is a legitimate generational entry. We can get sub 12, get a hedge on here, and probably see this thing move to new all-time highs as the hyperwave for the S&P violates and the target becomes phase 1. So that's like an 80% decline in the stocks. I shudder to think how high this thing's going to go. Gold still doing gold things, isn't it? I would think this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then we'll get the true breakout here. And the reason I'm so confident about that is, number one, silver continues to head up. But if we take a look at the miners, okay, look at all these miners, okay, the mining ETFs leading on the way up. I set a new sell zone up here, not in terms of price, but in terms of time for the level 3 members. Out of all the longer term accounts, again, here's the junior miners pushing up, and of course SilJ made again fresh new highs. So all of this tells me that the metals are about to blast off and they're being led higher by the miners. Notice how the chart of truth, the 10-year yield, continues to, roughly speaking, follow the tail back to the bond market squiggle. Yes, there's been some deviation in the middle because of the bond capitulation and the Asian kind of dumping of treasuries, but overall I think this thing is heading down for a bearish breakdown, and as it does that, it should drive the final move to the upside. Maybe 1, 2 rate cuts, and then we'll see the top come in for the market, because ultimately I do believe that not only are we in this hyperwave that should be due to break down soon, not only are we late in the 4-year cycles that should be due to top and head for the 4-year cycle lows next year, but these will be cuts into a slowdown when they show up because of all the information we keep presenting on the weekend's deep dives. Lastly, I wonder what's going to happen for the Dixie here. That is now enough of a push and a trendline breakout to say that this is for sure a weekly cycle. I wonder how long it's going to take for this weekly cycle to fail. If it does, then we're probably going to see a huge move up in the likes of Bitcoin, the precious metals, and the stock market in the not too distant future. Ultimately, I don't think it really matters too much what happens to the Dixie, because even if it runs from here, I still think we can get a big push everywhere else, just like we saw back here. And so that is the analysis from me heading into this week. If you're a level 3 member, going to try and find some extra trades setups to get behind. Obviously, I gave you a bunch of ideas on Saturday. For everyone else, I just suggest maybe consider what I've been saying and try your best not to get suckered into narratives and ideas, and instead to kind of sit back and objectively observe what's happening around you, because it's the big changes in people's perspectives and sentiment that are the most useful in markets. So other than that, have a fantastic week. I'll be back tomorrow, and until then, all the best from me. Cheers. Bye.
Camel Finance, he's the man to see. Rocking the markets with his contrarian spree. Trades like a pro, no fear, no shame. Sticking to his guns in his money game. He's a badass, oh yes indeed. Camel